Chinese Christians, I think, are amongst the most popular, one of the most populous and the most energetic and the most dedicated Christian churches spread throughout the world. And the church in the Soviet Union survived Stalinism, and it survived communism, and it survived. But you know, I'm not convinced the church in North America is not going to be taken in even further. So instead of saying, no, go ahead, bring on the persecution, we're standing tall, I'm not convinced a lot of churches in this country are not going to say, look, we can't afford to lose it. We're already financially unstable. We don't want to lose any more of the offerings. We don't want to be cast anymore as rednecks. We don't want to appear intolerant. So let's change the message. We don't want the persecution. So instead of that persecution refining the church as gold is refined, that persecution could in fact lead the church further into error in this country. And this is why I said, don't expect the persecution to make it all better, and it's going to make it stronger. It will make some Christians stronger. But in the meantime, think of the damage this government and this nation is doing to the youngest amongst us. Think of the fact that it might not have the effect it has had on other Christians, because we have become so used to compromise in North America. And obviously, I'm not talking about the people who come to this congregation or the church I attend or the thousands of other churches that are still fighting for the important things. I'm talking about the many churches in this country who have completely forgotten that they're even Christian. They're not in it anymore for the gospel. They're only in it because it's a business. And those are the people I worry about, that it's going to be increasingly difficult to get through. I call that the spiritually supine, the spiritually lazy. And there's a lot of Canadian Christians who are filling those boats right now. And they're afraid of persecution. They're afraid of taking a stand. So persecution might not be the thing to bring on. While we still have the God-given freedom in this country to stand up, you still have the right to vote, you still have the right to elect representatives who agree with the things that you agree with. You still have the right to affect the public forum in this country. We have Christians around the world who can't do that. You have the right to do that. Don't waste that right. Don't squander that freedom, because it was bought with the blood of a lot of veterans who died. And they didn't die for Canada did not respect the Bible and did not fear God. And they expect no more or no less in this country to live up to that sacrifice. And we have got to continue to fight for the things we believe. Next slide. In the age of Antichrist, it will be too late. Christian participation will be impossible, because either they've been removed from the earth or they're going to be systematically executed. So we still have the opportunity today. And while we still have that chance, while we still can act in freedom, let us make sure that our congregations, that we as Christians live lives that bring others to Christ, and that we continue to have a political environment that allows that to happen unmolested. Because believe me, when you lose your freedom, you know it. When you lose your freedom, you know you cannot act, and you cannot act as a Christian in the same way as you did before. Do not take your freedom for granted. There are people out there who are working day and night to take your freedom away, to criminalize Christianity. Day and night they're working for it. They don't like us. They want the church destroyed. They want our freedom taken away. And we still have the freedom to do something about it. So I would encourage you, in this little talk this morning, this little dissertation, was not to say it's too late. I wouldn't be standing up here. I would be joining So many who just are waiting for the end to come and taking what I can. I'm here today to say there is hope for this country. I've seen optimistic things said. A couple weeks ago, our Prime Minister stood up here in Ottawa and he said he was not going to stand anymore for anti-Semitic behavior. And he said he was not going to stand up to people who wanted to destroy the state of Israel. He stood up for Israel, he stood up for Jews around the world, and it's been a long time before we had a leader in this country who wanted to do that, who wasn't afraid if he was going to get Muslims upset. So I applaud him for doing that. It was a great, courageous thing to do. And every time I say, well, I can't get it, he surprises me and does something like that. So thank God. There's a lot of Christians who are in government right now. Most of them, yes, are on the conservative side. There are some liberals. None of the NDP. But the point is, there are good people that are working for this. You need to connect with them. We've got a great MP here, in Scott Reid, who does believe in the traditional values that we believe in, and who is accessible to his constituents. So I'm not shut your door. I know Scott personally. As MPs go, he's one of the better ones. And it's nice to say you've got a guy like that in your state. But don't disassociate yourself from the political process because you're a Christian. If the salt has lost its saltiness, everything will go stale. And you've got to salt the political process. You've got to enrich it. You've got to make it better. Because if you don't, if you create the vacuum, it will be taken over by the Sven Robinsons and the Bill 6As of this world who have a completely different direction in mind. And they are fighting. And I hear Christians all the time say, it's just too much work to do. It's just too much. I don't think we're going to be able to do it. Well, in the first place, we know how the book ends, and yes, we're all going to heaven in the end, and Christ is coming back as Lord of Lords and King of Kings, and He is going to reign. But is it worth, in the meantime, trying to imprint ourselves to make this a more godless society so that the righteous are in authority? Yes, it is, for the sake of our children, for the sake of the unsaved, for the sake of the freedom of our churches. And let me tell you, 30 years ago, 30, 40 years ago, whenever you want to chart the beginnings of this creeping destruction, this creeping corruption in Canadian life, do you think homosexual activists ever thought that they were going to have the kind of acceptance that they have today? That they were going to have the right to marry? That they were going to have the kind of promotion that they enjoy from Hollywood today? That would have been a dream. But let me tell you, if I can acknowledge, I won't admire it, but I'll acknowledge the dedication and the perseverance of these activists who over the years pressed their issues, and forced their issues until people just gave up. And Christians, I think we can be just as dedicated, have just as much perseverance, and we better have more authority than the unbeliever. Because we do have the authority of Scripture on our side, and we do have God on our side, and we do have the history of the world on our side. You know, when I was a kid, an evangelist from Washington State used to come up to BC quite a bit. I grew up in Vancouver Island. And he used to tell us, I read the book, we win. And sooner or later we are going to win. But in the meantime, do not despair. Keep up the fight. And continue to know that it's important to be Christians in the public forum. Because if we are not Christians in the public forum, nobody else will do it for us. Thank you this morning.